Thank you guys so much. Please engage with the content as much as you're able. Like the video, share, subscribe, become a member here at Burn It Down with Kim Brown. We appreciate all the material and the free support as well. So, this past Super Bowl 58 between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers did not go the way that the Niners had hoped. The Chiefs have become the first team since the New England Patriots to win back-to-back Super Bowls, led by their MVP quarterback there, Patrick Mahomes. But while the Super Bowl, which happened to be the most viewed event according to CBS, the most viewed event since the moon landing, they said in 1969. The Super Bowl had over 123 million viewers. 120 of those watched on network television. I believe another 3.5 million watched on other platforms. The most viewed Super Bowl ever, the most viewed program in U.S. television history was the Super Bowl, y'all. And while the Super Bowl was happening, America's number one ally, Israel, decided to execute a bombing campaign in the south of Gaza, in the town called Rafah. Southern Gaza is where all of the Palestinian refugees have been directed to gather at, because that was a so-called safe zone where Israel promised that Palestinian refugees would be safe if they all fled to Rafah, right? As the IDF and Israeli forces aided with U.S. artillery and bombs and missiles, have proceeded to destroy a large part of Palestine, right? And Rafah now encompasses a population of 1.5 million people. The whole population total of Palestine was 2 million. So we got 1.5 million people crowded in this one place. And during the Super Bowl, Israel did what many are calling the Super Bowl massacre. While Americans' attention was diverted to the Super Bowl, the foosball game, Israel murdered dozens of Palestinians. Now, the news that you heard coming out of this Rafah attack was that 2 Israeli hostages were rescued. And that has been the lead story. What has been buried later in the story is that, quote, 67 Palestinian civilians were murdered. And throughout this war, the majority of the almost 30,000 Palestinians that have been killed by Israeli forces, 2/3 of them have been women and children. And this attack in Rafah was no different. So I want us to take a look at a couple of clips. Both of these come from TikTok. The first one is actually an NPR package. NPR has a journalist on the ground in Palestine reporting on the actions there. And then the next clip that we're going to see right after that comes from a TikToker talking about the actual status of Palestinians in Rafah, and the tremendous cowardice and cruelty that the Israeli forces, that the Israeli military, directed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the absolute disregard for humanity, and the ways in which Israelis are preventing from humanitarian aid from even reaching the very exposed Palestinians who are dying not only from Israeli missiles and bullets, but they're on the brink of starvation. Let's look at the packages, y'all. Let's check this out.
In the middle of the night, an intensive and crazy bombardment all over Rafah city was totally heard and wake me up, me and my family. At the first moment, we feel that this is the start of the ground invasion for Rafah. It appears after that an Israeli special forces entered the city and freed 2 hostages. At the same time, the Israelis carried away a heavy bombardment in the city. It was very loud, from missiles to artillery and even helicopter bullets. The Israeli army said that the bombing was to give cover to the special forces, but innocent Palestinian civilians paid a very heavy price for this. Hospital officials tell me many dozens of people were killed. I saw with my own eyes a two twin that they lost their mother, a father that he lost all of his family, and a 40 days old infant who got killed.
This is evidence that the second you stop paying attention is the second the Israeli government takes advantage. While the Super Bowl was airing tonight, the Israeli government has launched their attack on Rafah, where 1.4 million Palestinians are currently residing. And when I say residing, I mean forcibly displaced, sleeping in tents, all crammed into one another with absolutely nowhere to evacuate to. And already they have bombed 14 houses, 3 mosques, and they have killed, I know this says 60 plus, but I think the number is at 120 plus people. If you didn't know this, Biden had given Netanyahu the green light to attack Rafah so long as they had an evacuation plan for Palestinians. Obviously, Netanyahu knows that's not possible. They are as furthest south as they can go, so no evacuation plan, we're just gonna attack anyway. Netanyahu told his war cabinet that they need to be done attacking Rafah before Ramadan comes, which is March 10th. That is in 28 days. Palestinians in Rafah don't even have another 28 seconds to spare, so I ask every single one of you to please go to the link in my bio and email your reps. All you have to do is select your state, put in your zip code, and it automatically populates an email for you, and you click send. All of that takes less than 10 seconds.
Politically, I'm not certain that elected officials in the US are feeling what they need to be feeling surrounding the US basic tacit support and endorsement of the genocide that's happening in Palestine. Joe Biden of late has tried to talk a little tough to Netanyahu, saying that the bombing is indiscriminate, that it's over the top. And you know what Netanyahu said? Fuck you, nigga. Send me some more bombs. And Biden said, okay, dog, I got you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what we're dealing with here. Like this acknowledgement of the war crimes of genocide, that this sort of, tongue in cheek acknowledgement, but you're not actually willing to cut off the spigot of arming the Israelis to continue in this genocide campaign that they find themselves on, right? And the sister there talking about reach out to your elected leaders, which I encourage everybody to do that. And in fact, not now, Will, but momentarily we are going to be hearing from one of my elected leaders. Now, I didn't vote for this nigga, but he still represents the state of Maryland in the Senate, Chris Van Hollen. Van Hollen actually talked like he had some fucking sense, but his vote actually showed us quite the opposite. But before we get to Van Hollen, I want us to take a look at just further evidence. Although the evidence at this point is overwhelming, the evidence could capsize us all of the war crimes that the Israelis are committing against Palestinian civilians. But there were a pair of Al Jazeera journalists who were also killed. And many believe that journalists have been targeted by the Israelis, but intentionally, the Al Jazeera journalists have been targeted. Total, I believe there's been over 120 journalists murdered since October 7th. And murdering members of the press intentionally is a war crime also, okay? And Israel knows this. So the first clip we're going to see is going to be about the Al Jazeera journalists who are killed. And I know this is almost like Groundhog Day, because I know I've reported about journalists being killed in Palestine recently, somewhat recently on this program. And then the second clip we're going to see is a comment made by I believe this is the UN chief, the chief of the United Nations, because all of the world humanitarian organizations, regardless, trust me, we could think very badly about the UN and all of their related so-called humanitarian organizations. We don't have to look no further than Haiti to see that the United Nations is not always, and perhaps in many instances, seldom a positive actor for humanitarianism on the world stage, right? The UN is quite capable of fuckery, but you know what? At least they will try to tote the correct line in public about shit that is right and shit that is wrong, especially when it pertains to genocide and in blatant human suffering. So let's take a look at these. And let me give content warning, guys. I believe some of this footage is going to be graphic, but this is real life. This is what's happening to Palestinians. This is what's happening to people in Gaza. This is what's happening to people in the West Bank, in this part of the world. And we should absolutely care. And even though some of it is hard to watch, y'all, like no matter what the fuck is happening here, and some bad shit happening here, it whatever's happening here is not what the fuck is happening over there. So you try to keep things in perspective. So content warning, trigger warning for perhaps some graphic images and just news about innocent people having their lives taken in an imperialist war. So let's take a look.
2 more journalists were targeted this morning. 2 more journalists were targeted this morning and critical injured. It's now up. It's now up.
I am deeply troubled by the number of journalists that have been killed in this conflict. Freedom of press is a fundamental condition for the people to be able to know what's really happening everywhere in the world.
Now, Al Jazeera has released a statement following that attack on the 2 journalists by Israeli forces. This is what the statement says. Al Jazeera Media Network confirms that the targeting of reporter Ismail Abu Ammar and cameraman Ahmed Matar is a full-fledged crime added to Israel's crimes against journalists and the latest in a series of deliberate targeting of Al Jazeera's journalists and correspondents in Palestine. The network stresses that this targeting is intimidation against journalists to prevent them from reporting the heinous crimes committed by the occupation army against innocent civilians in Gaza. Al Jazeera renews its calls on the international community and media freedom groups to take action to protect journalists in Gaza and hold Israel's occupation army accountable.
Correspondent Ismail Abu Omar and cameraman Ahmed Matar were reporting from Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip before they were hit by missiles from an Israeli drone. They've been reporting on the Palestinians displaced between Rafah and Khan Yunis. Minutes later, they would become the story. The drone strike has left them with catastrophic injuries.
Al
Jazeera's correspondent Ismail Abu Omar arrived at a makeshift hospital after suffering severe injuries. He was targeted by a drone missile at the Maraj area. Upon examination, his right leg was already severed, in addition to shrapnel all across his chest and his head, as well as his left leg. We suspect his femoral artery was cut off at the bottom of his leg. He was given first aid and then transferred here to the European hospital. He was bleeding heavily to the point that his blood pressure and pulse were not readable. This means he is in critical condition.
Ahmed Matar has suffered shrapnel wounds to his head. Both men are in a serious condition, according to doctors. The government media office in Gaza says it's the 5th time in this war that journalists working for Al Jazeera have been singled out. It says they were deliberately targeted in violation of international law. At least 126 journalists have been killed in Gaza since October the 7th, according to the government there.
Ismail Abu Ammar, Qanat Al Jazeera, Khan Yunis.
Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera.
So the journalists, I believe, are still trying to recover. They have not been killed. At least that the latest indicate. If I misspoke, my apologies there. That the journalists were indeed targeted by Israeli forces. And as you hear from the reports, it sounds as though there's no question that their injuries are catastrophic. I honestly am not certain what the latest update on their status is. So I encourage you to go to Al Jazeera AJ Plus. I know they will have the latest on the status of those news gatherers working for them who were just doing what they are supposed to do. They are supposed to show us what's happening. They're supposed to tell us what's going on the ground. And when Israeli forces use their drones, armed drones, guys, this is the same armed drone strikes that Israel used to go deep into Lebanese territory in order to target a so-called Hamas leader with a drone strike. Where did that happen? I know what happened in Lebanon. I can't think of the city, but right now. But this is how nice they are with this shit, right? Like Israel's armed drones can pinpoint a person, y'all, with a missile. And that's exactly what they did to those Al Jazeera journalists. Those people, those journalists are wearing very distinctive gear, helmets, flak jackets, usually things on them that identify them as press. It's meant to illuminate them so the soldiers know not to fucking shoot them. So the Israelis knew exactly who they were dropping missiles on, and they did it on purpose. And it's just the latest example. Like we've seen the Israelis use their forces to go up into hospitals, dressed as doctors, and start shooting patients. Like the levels of depravity that the Israelis have committed against the Palestinians really knows no bounds. And here come the dumbass fucking United States still trying to push for more funding to support Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan. And the Senate was actually able to get something passed Tuesday morning, a budget, $95 billion foreign aid, blah, blah, blah. Majority of that earmarked for Ukraine, but Israel got some change in there too. It has not yet passed the House, but when the sister in one of the previous videos says to email your elected representative and tell them to get this shit together, right? Democrats especially are starting to change their tone. And I found this very illuminating from one of my own senators, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. I can't say whether or not Van Hollen is a cracker. I mean, he might be a cracker. I'm trying to think. Can I recall any overt crackerism from Chris Van Hollen? And for some of our new viewers who may not be familiar, and especially if you are Caucasian or non-Caucasian, whatever, to be clear, whatever, when I say cracker, am I talking about white folks? Yes, but I'm talking about racist white folks, okay? And liberal Democrats are very good at racism, their own particular brand of racism. Yes. Does it sound like Trump and the quote MAGA Republicans? No, it does sounds a little different, presents a little different, but it's still crackerism nonetheless. So I don't know. Let me just assume. let me assume Van Hollen's a cracker out there. You know, like I said, I didn't vote for that motherfucker. But regardless. So anyway. So Chris Van Hollen circulated this video on his social medias. And this was like him. I don't know how in the fuck he got 20 goddamn minutes to stand on the Senate floor and just pontificate. But when I watched it, and I did watch it, I said, oh, he's making points. But when I realized how he ended up voting, I said, oh, right. Right. This is how the Democrats play on our face, right? They will feign or even actually articulate very good understanding of the situation. Right. Oh, so you do understand what's going on. Oh, yeah. They understand. They empathize. They feel it. Right. But between what the fuck they say and what the fuck they end up doing, usually be night and day. So we're going to pick up some of Chris Van Hollen's comments. And guys, again, I don't do this to y'all. I don't force y'all to watch these Bamas on the floor of Congress, you know, doing that oral masturbatory thing that all these senators love to do. Just you know, I'm like, can you put the lotion away, please? Like, I don't want to hear all this. But regardless, like I said, I would not say impressed with Van Hollen's comments, but it caught my attention. So Will's going to pick this up at about 9 minutes, and y'all gonna catch a few minutes of this because I want y'all to be clear that he's clear on what the fuck is happening. He's crystal fucking clear on what's happening. So, Will, let's pick up Senator Van Hollen's comments on the Senate floor from Tuesday.
Standing by, and in some cases, with their active participation, attacks Palestinians with impunity and pushes them off their land. What should we do? What should we do when we have made clear that the United States opposes the launch of a new military operation in the city of Gaza because it will turn into an even bigger humanitarian disaster, but Prime Minister Netanyahu goes on American national TV to say he's going to do it anyway? Rafah is a city in southern Gaza. Before the war started, it was a city with a population of about 300,000 people. Its population has now multiplied in size by 5 times. About 1.3 million people are there now, over 1 million of them having fled death and destruction in other parts of Gaza because they were told by Prime Minister Netanyahu and others that they would be safe there. I visited the Egyptian side of the Rafah Gate about 5 weeks ago, along with my colleague, Senator Merkley, to better understand the humanitarian situation in Gaza. We talked to people, we listened to people, we got fully briefed. Madam President, the humanitarian situation was a catastrophe then. And by all accounts, the situation in Gaza has gone from nightmare to pure hell, even more so in the north than in the south. When asked on national television on Sunday where all of these civilians now seeking refuge would go, Prime Minister Netanyahu breezily stated, "You know, the areas that we've cleared north of Rafah, plenty of areas there." That's what the Prime Minister said on American TV. Now, Madam President, unless he's talking about areas that were cleared through bombing and have been reduced to rubble, it's simply not true. Don't believe those who claim that there's an easy path to caring for the 1.3 million people in Rafah. It wasn't that long ago that Prime Minister Netanyahu claimed that there was no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. No humanitarian crisis there. In fact, he boasted that he was allowing into Gaza the, quote, minimum amount of humanitarian aid to avoid a humanitarian disaster. Well, the claim that there's no humanitarian disaster doesn't pass any credible test, and we know that. For weeks, the United Nations and international aid organizations have warned that Palestinian civilians are on the verge of starvation. Those warnings have been ignored and dismissed by Prime Minister Netanyahu and his extremist government. Just recently, the World Food Program, together with UNICEF, which is the UN organization to look after the well-being of children around the world. Both these organizations, by the way, currently headed by Americans. The WFP and UNICEF issued an analysis recently on the deterioration of the nutrition situation in Gaza during the first 120 days of the war. Here are some of the things that they concluded. In northern Gaza, more than 90% of children aged 6 to 23 months and pregnant and breastfeeding women and girls face severe food poverty. The food they do have is of the lowest nutritional value. More than 90% of children aged 6 to 23 months and more than 95% of pregnant and breastfeeding women and girls are eating 2 or fewer food groups. 95% of households are limiting meals and portion sizes. 64% are only eating 1 meal a day. They indicated that health screenings show a rapid deterioration of the nutrition situation for children aged 6 to 23 months in northern Gaza, with global acute malnutrition at over 15%. WHO, the World Health Organization, classifies global acute malnutrition over 15% as a critical emergency. Madam President, yesterday I began to hear reports of people who have actually starved to death in Gaza. So earlier today, I asked the head of the World Food Program, former American Ambassador Cindy McCain, about these reports. I sent her a note, text message, asking about reports that some children have now crossed the awful threshold from being on the verge of starvation to dying of starvation. She wrote back, and I quote, "This is true. We are unable to get in enough food to keep people from the brink. Famine is imminent. I wish I had better news," end quote. Madam President, I want that to sink in. Kids in Gaza are now dying from the deliberate withholding of food. In addition to the horror of that news, one other thing is true. That is a war crime. It is a textbook war crime. And that makes those who orchestrate it war criminals.
That's enough. That's
So
enough.
now the question is, what will the United States do?
That's enough, Will.
What will we
the
do?
United States do?
What will President Biden do?
That's enough, man.
President Biden must take action in response.
All right. There it is. Maryland Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen announcing that the denial of food assistance getting into Gaza because Palestinians are literally starving to death, that children are literally starving to death, in addition to women and children and innocent civilians being bombed by the tens of thousands. These are war crimes, and those that allow it are war criminals. So I'm assuming he means the likely Democratic presidential nominee, Joe Biden, right? If Netanyahu and Israel are committing war crimes, but they're committing these war crimes not only under American authority, but using American artillery, well, then America also is committing war crimes, yes? Now, no. I mean, this ain't America's first rodeo with war crimes. I mean, check the resume, my nigga. Fucking Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, Grenada, Haiti. Where you want to go? We been around. We've been around the world. We've been around doing war. We've been around the world. Man, spin that fucking globe and throw a dart. Throw a dart at the world map. I assure you, America has committed a war crime there, and we are aiding and abetting the war crimes right now. Thank you so much, Chichi Macha in the chat, reminding us that under Twitter, we still calling it Twitter, that under the Twitter tweet of Senator Van Hollen, patting himself on the back for getting the answer right about what the fuck is really going on in Palestine. Yes, it was noted that Van Hollen, after that speech, indeed voted in favor of that foreign aid weaponry military support package. He voted in favor of it to give Israel another, $14-15 billion, I believe is in the bill, even though it still has not passed the House. But the Senate, the hardest chamber to get shit passed in fucking Congress, was like, oh, this is easy peasy. What was the vote, y'all? I think it was 70-29 was the vote. A few Republicans crossed the aisle to vote in favor of the spending package. And Chris Van Hollen, punk ass, talked all that accurate shit about what is happening in Palestine, what is being allowed to happen to the civilian population in Palestine, what Netanyahu is doing, playing directly in our faces, right? And he went ahead and voted to send him some more money whilst cutting funding, cutting aid and humanitarian funding for Palestine. You cannot trust these fucking Democrats, kids. Okay? And when I say Democrat, and I say you can't trust the Democrats, listen, I know, let us please not have no goofy DNC ass niggas in here, because that does not mean go fuck with Trump and the Republicans. That's not what that means at all. But it means that we need to be very clear. There is no lesser of the two evils. This is evil. What Joe Biden is enabling out of Israel is pure evil. And to be clear, if Trump were in power, the shit would not be no fucking different. Okay? It might be slightly worse, but I don't really know how we can improve on worse in what's happening right now in Palestine. It is a nightmare situation, right? And it is happening under the authority and under the watch of the Biden White House, okay? So please make no mistake when these motherfucking Democrats start screaming and hollering about we have to protect democracy. Bitch, I'm not protecting no fucking body who enables this kind of shit. I don't give a shit who your opponent is, nigga. Okay. You are doing this. And don't try to have no tough talk for Netanyahu now, Chris Van Hollen, Joe Biden. You keep sending him the bullets. You keep sending him the artillery. You keep sending him the weaponry. That is giving him permission. If you want him to stop bombing Palestine, stop sending him fucking military aid. Don't send another goddamn tank shell, another fucking bullet, another fucking missile over there if you really want him to stop. And the bottom line is they don't want him to stop. And you know what? I hope let this be the issue as much and then fuck it. You know what? Let it be a constellation of fucking issues that cost Joe Biden the White House. You know what I'm saying? I know that the power brokers at times are willing to concede power in order to get to the greater goal, whatever that might be in Israel, right? And I know there's a lot of learned, not speculation, but people have really looked into this, and you should go check out them people, okay? because Israel's master plan, I cannot speak to the details. I just know that it's sinister, right? And it bodes poorly for the Palestinian folks. No question about that, y'all. But this cannot be allowed to run. So I'm hoping that the two issues, well, like I said, I hope it's a bunch of issues that capsize Joe Biden. But one of them issues has got to be this shit, what's going on, the genocide in Palestine. And the other one's got to be the fact that women lost tremendous access to reproductive health access under Joe Biden. Again, all this shit happening under Biden. God damn. Trump wish he could have been this fucking busy in his first term, right? Fucking shit up around the world. Trump wish he could have been this goddamn busy. Trump is pissed. He ain't got a hand in this right now. But I don't wish Trump on any of us, y'all. I don't. I really don't. But again, from the position of the people who are on the ground in Palestine, for the people who are suffering at the southern border, for our people who continue to suffer at the hands of American law enforcement and in the prison systems, if the shit needs to be shaken up by Donald Trump, if Trump is going to get America closer to failure, it's got to be fucking Trump. And I'm not saying go vote for that nigga. No. I'm saying withhold your vote, if you so choose, from a Biden ticket. Because how can you in good conscience keep supporting an administration that is supporting what's happening to the Palestinians right now? And that's exactly what Joe Biden is doing. And again, Joe Biden's record is deplorable on a lot of things. Okay, we got the Mountain Valley Pipeline still pressing forward through Southern Virginia and into North Carolina. That is a pipeline that is going to go through Black-owned and Indigenous-owned and rural areas. That's going to be transporting disgusting coal and coal ash and all kinds of nasty shit. Biden okayed that. He approved that shit. What else is Joe Biden out here doing fucking shit up? Just to bury the thing. To name it. Name it. If Biden got his fingerprints on it, he's fucked it up. Okay? And if the Democrats need to suffer a loss in power in the White House, on the congressional level, if they get the full minority of Congress, so fucking be it. Like, stop coming to me every 4 years with your hand out or wagging your finger or shaking your fist at me because this is the most important election of our lifetime. Because if we don't get out and vote for Joe Biden, the world is going to fall apart. Well, y'all have run this game on me for at least the past 4 to 5 presidential elections. I stopped falling for it during Obama's second term, but and I have not fallen for it since. But a good many of our people are out here falling for the shit because Trump is made to look like the second incarnate of Satan, which he probably is. But Joe Biden, if Satan is one, Biden is one fucking A. Like, don't let that old doddering granddaddy act fool you, y'all. Like, don't. I know it don't fool none of y'all. Never mind. I know y'all not fooled by that shit. But you got to tell our people, and you need to underscore the fact that we need to be concerned about what is going on in Palestine. Again, I was watching the morning show this morning. Umar came up, and what the fuck was I don't search for that nigga. I don't know what the fuck Dr. Umar be talking about. But if he's on some shit influencing younger generations of black folks to not care about what's happening in Palestine because that's that shit over there. No, the fuck it isn't. Okay. Them IDF forces come over to America to train. Those IDF forces share tactics and strategies with American policing that they, in turn, use against us, black folks in America, right? Like, there's too many overlaps and too many connections for motherfuckers with giant platforms to just tell us as an oppressed people to not give a fuck about other oppressed people. Nigga, are you high? That's what's wrong with these fucking pseudo black capitalist ass niggas. They start to fucking talk like white folks. Jesus. They start to fucking talk like isolationist minded whites that don't want to make connect. Anyway, you know what? Not our white friends, of course. Oh shit. Somebody ran us some bucks. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But y'all, so should I call Chris Van Hollen's office? I think I should. Unfortunately, I can't record it because in the state of Maryland, you need 2-party consent, right? But everybody getting recorded on the phone call or anything recorded in the state of Maryland, everybody needs to be made aware of the situation, right? So I'm not that pressed to record my call with Chris Van Hollen's office, but I won't hesitate to call because that sham, that performance, dog, didn't we just have the fucking Oscars? It was the Oscars coming up. And regardless, that shit was Academy Award winning, okay? He broke it down. He called out Netanyahu. He identified the crisis. He talked all the right shit. Nigga, oh, you studied. Oh, you're familiar with the topic. Okay, then why the fuck did you vote complete opposite of how the fuck you just talked? Why? Because Democrats do this. Hold on. Let me illustrate. They do this. That's called talking out of both sides of your neck. Everybody familiar with the phrase talking out of both sides of your neck? That means you are taking opposing positions on an issue and you are talking out of both sides of your neck. And that's exactly what that punk ass motherfucker, Chris Van Hollen, you bitch, nigga. I told y'all, this whole Maryland congressional delegation ain't nothing but bitch niggas from top to fucking bottom. We ain't had a real nigga represent Maryland in Congress since goddamn Barbara Mikulski, and she was a real one out here. Babs was real with the shit. Babs used to be a social worker. That's why Babs was real with the shit. Now, don't go pulling up Barbara Mikulski's voting record and talk about what Kim. she supported the crime bill. I don't know for a fact that she did, actually. Barbara Mikulski might have voted against that shit, but don't correct me. Look, look, I'm getting weeded now. I know I contradicted myself. Look, I don't need that now. Just once in the blue when there's nothing to do. All right, let me calm down.